welcome to my channel. For those who don't know me, my name is Rudy Venter. I'm primarily a landscape photographer from South Africa. This morning I'm here in the Karoo semi-desert area of South Africa, and the plan is to actually shoot some more intimate landscapes of the plants and the rocks and so on. We've had a slight drizzle during the night, which is very unusual for this area, and even at the moment it's quite wet. If it wasn't so warm it would have been unpleasant. The only problem is keeping the lenses dry. So sorry if you see some rain on the lens or on the back of the screen of the camera. I'm going to start immediately because I think we're going to get some wind soon, and then it's difficult with long exposures with the wind, with the plants moving. Because of the rain this morning, I'm not shooting with my normal setup. Normally I shoot with Sony equipment. I've been shooting for the last roughly 3.5–4 years with Sony. Before that I shot with Canon, but I've had a bad experience with Sony and wet and a bit of rain. So this morning, just because I knew it was going to be wet, I brought out one of my old Canons, 5 series Canon. I know those things are really waterproof, but I haven't shot with it for years. I haven't processed the Canon image for probably 3 or 4 years. So this is going to be fun. Let's see what I can find, and thanks for joining me again. Well, in spite of the high humidity and the slight drizzle, I've found a little composition here that I think works. I'm really right down on ground level, shooting this at 17mm. But what I like about this very intimate composition is, first of all, the moisture and the air and the bit of drizzle has given everything a very nice color. It kind of really brings out the colors in these desert plants. So I think that is quite nice. What I like about the composition of these tiny little plants, they're not actually cactuses, but I like the colors, the shapes in between the rocks. The little clump on the left hand side is actually very nice between the rocks, and then there's a slight leading line going from the foreground in the middle towards the bigger clump of plants towards the back, and the slight sheen on the rocks and the green specifically that really come out with a higher humidity is actually quite gorgeous. You will notice maybe that normally I shoot with Sony equipment. I really like the Sony cameras. Specifically the sensors are really great, but I knew this morning was going to be really wet, and I've had a bad experience with the Sony A7R III before that got wet in very light, almost not rain, just a drizzle. So this morning the trusty old Canon is out. I know it's waterproof, really waterproof. So and also the colors are really special on this camera. It takes a lot less post-processing to bring out the really beautiful colors in it. So it's like reuniting with an old friend shooting with this 5D4 this morning. But yes, let's see what we can produce here. I'll also look for a few more. No need, a few more compositions. No need to focus stack here. I think there'll be enough depth of field. I'm really not interested in getting the stuff really in the back in focus. So let's go hunt for something else.
Here's the image that I managed to capture. I really like the beautiful deep saturated colors out of the camera, and also the sky above, just that tiny bit of fog that you can see with the mountain hidden behind it. That's actually quite nice. The image unfortunately is quite busy, lots of plants and rock details, which is maybe not ideal, but I do love the line that the plants form from bottom right towards the center of the image. Then also the two rocks in the bottom left hand corner kind of point towards the center of the image as well. Sometimes a very busy image like this does work, so I'm relatively happy with my first capture of the day. Hopefully there are more. Let's see.
Well, here's another version of the image I just shot. I just moved slightly back to get the clump of plants on the bottom right hand into the frame as well. I think that might be slightly more interesting. The drizzle is now stopped for a minute or two anyway. It normally returns after a few seconds. I can see another cloud rolling in, but I'm quickly capturing a few of these absolutely gorgeous images with these plants. They're normally not this colorful, you know, when it's dry and hot. Everything is gray or shades of light grayish green, but the moment there's a bit of moisture, and that's also the reason why there's so much lichen around here. Early mornings, sometimes of the year, the clouds roll in and you get this drizzle. Really quite nice because it's not cold. I'm sitting here with without anything warm on, and it's still fine. One more image for luck. I think that's fine. Let's just have a look that I'm not blowing any highlights or anything. No, histogram looks perfect.
I think the slightly wider image does have merit. Primarily because it includes more the rocks in the foreground that kind of better defines the leading line that points towards the top third of the image. Also the line of euphorbias on the right hand side is now a complete line, what makes almost like an inverted V with or an arrow, I should say, arrowhead with the rocks pointing into it. Overall I quite like this image. I did cut a bit more of the top off to try and get more details in the foreground, so I did lose that bit of the sky that was quite interesting, but overall I quite like this image, and I think it is a very good example of what it looks like when it's wet in this very dry part of the world.
As the drizzle starts again, I found another composition again with the same plants, euphorbias, and then the same rock formation but from a different side. I like again the shape of the rocks. There's a bit of white quartz in them. The finer details, the small little plant, greenish plant bottom left, the one just to the right of it, just past center, is also very interesting. The colors on the rocks, the euphorbias, the slight yellowish orange thorns on them, everything is just beautiful. And while I'm sitting here, the jackals are calling around me, and I heard some baboons just now as well, so everybody is enjoying the humid, not so hot morning. Half a second, f14, ISO 100. Just make sure that I'm not overexposing the sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slightly underexpose just one shot for the sky as well. Let's just see what the sky looks like in that image. Slightly blown, but there's no detail there anyway. It's enough. For the Canon you can recover highlights far better than with the Sony. Of course the Sony is better in shadows again. So it's going to be fun processing these images. I haven't processed the Canon image for probably 3 or 4 years.
Here's the image I managed to capture. I did end up actually pulling back the highlights a bit in the sky, so there's a bit of detail in the tiny piece of sky you can see, which I think actually adds a nice contrast to the very busy foreground with all the fine plant detail and the rocks. What I do like about this specifically is the rock formation from bottom left towards the center of the image, the lines that it forms, and then into the vertical euphorbias that you can see there. And what I find very interesting are the delicate plants, specifically in the foreground that you can see. Even though this is a dry, arid area, very harsh conditions, there are so many plants with such fine, delicate details and tiny, tiny flowers. I find that absolutely fascinating, and I think it makes these images special. Overall, quite happy with the capture. The colors are also nice due to the slight amount of water on the plants and even on the rocks.
Here's another composition that is quite interesting. It's very busy, I realize that, and the sky is not pretty, so I'll probably end up cutting the sky off, cropping the sky out completely and just going 16:9 or even longer. But what I absolutely love about this is the variety of plants here, all growing on this tiny little sandbar or rocky bar, I should say. Even a little flower towards the left, just off center. And there's at least, I can see 3 or 4 different plant types here all together. I think this is going to be quite a nice combination. I might also end up just shooting slightly more cropped versions of this as well, specifically the plant on the left hand side, the euphorbia on the left hand side, and then almost in the middle the plant with a little pink flower. That might also make a nice composition. No real leading lines or foreground interest, just nature at its best.
I did end up cropping this image quite a bit, specifically getting rid of the top, the sky. I wasn't really happy with the grey sky, and there's quite a bit of distortion there as well. Also got rid of a bit of the left hand side. I like the detail in the center of the image, really interesting plants, and the tiny shrub on the bottom left hand corner kind of anchors the image, the foreground anyway. The foreground is also quite interesting, all those little chips of rock, wide variety of them. Interesting to think that this was many millions of years ago. This was the seabed of an inland freshwater sea. Fascinating.
Here you see it's the slightly more intimate shot. Not that it can get that intimate. I'm at 40 millimeters now. So, but I really love tiny little droplets on the plants. The very green colors, that tiny little flower just off center, just above center. And I think I'll end up cropping this even more in post-processing to get rid of everything, maybe make it a square crop, get rid of everything on the right hand side of the image.
I quite like this composition with a spiky plant just off center, and also shows the tiny little pink purple flower. I really like the tiny droplets of water on the spiky parts of this plant, and also it's a slightly different color to the surrounding bush, more a grey green than a harsh or a very saturated green, I should say. I think I'll also take an even more intimate shot of this. I love the tiny little flower. I just wish I had a macro lens with me, so I can do a full frame composition with just that little flower. But I'll shoot it as tight as I can with this lens that I've got with me.
Again, one of those mornings I wish I had my macro lens with me. I should just make a point of keeping it in the backpack, but the problem is I end up keeping so many lenses in the backpack, it gets heavy, and then if you want to go uphill or up a mountain, it's not that much fun. So every now and then I empty the bag and just put the essentials in. And unfortunately the macro lens suffered. But I might come back a bit later today. I think these conditions are going to last for a while. Come back a bit later today with a macro lens and shoot some of these plants while they still have tiny droplets of water on them.
I did manage to shoot a slightly closer version of the flower, and here it is. What I ended up actually doing is I had an extension tube in my backpack, so I managed to get the focusing distance a bit closer. So here's the version that shows a bit more detail on the flower, also the spiky parts of the plant and the tiny droplets on it. Overall quite a satisfying image, this contrast of the colorful flower in the grayish area, and I haven't seen this type of flower before, so I'm hoping that these plants will have more of them in the future. Beautiful.
You can quite clearly see the clouds rolling in over the mountains, and you'll probably also see the water droplets falling on the lens, but actually quite beautiful, very different from the normal type of weather pattern we have around here. So this is quite pleasant. A nice change. See towards the north, there's a few areas that are quite clear, and then more towards the west there's some more clouds rolling in. I was actually hoping that the clouds would be even lower, so they sometimes do get quite a little bit lower than this, but yes, it's usable. It helps a bit with separation, and again it gives me a very soft light, which is quite pleasant. You'll see some of the trees are flowering. The yellow tree towards the left in the image here, they're just starting to flower, so I'm hoping for a nice color display in the next week or two. Well, I came here to shoot intimate landscapes close to the ground, but I can never resist the tree. I just found this composition with the plant in the foreground that is just starting to flower, then a euphorbia with the nice colors, and then a shepherd's tree slightly further back, and then the mountains at the back covered by fog or cloud rolling in, which is actually quite nice. It's just started raining again, or drizzling, so I'm gonna try and shoot this quickly before the lens gets wet. I didn't bring an umbrella. This part of the world we don't really own umbrellas. Let's just see if that is, exposure is fine. Sky's a bit overexposed, so I'll shoot one for the sky. Let me just get the meter on. Shoot it about minus 1.5, I think I need to shoot it at. Okay, let's have a look. That looks 1/15th of a second, f14. Yeah, the sky looks fine. But now on the other side I need to make sure I've got the foreground detail all nicely exposed. Because on the Canon I don't really want to have to lift the shadows too much, if I can help it. Now that should be nice for the foreground. 0.4 seconds, again f14, ISO 100. Yeah, sky totally blown, but the foreground nice and bright. Maybe that's overdoing it slightly. Let's go to plus 0.7. At f14 I'm not really worried about depth of field. At 17 millimeters it shouldn't be an issue. Yes, foreground still looks good. I actually like this composition.
Here's the final image after I combined 3 different exposures, one for the sky, one for the foreground, and one for the actual tree. What I like about it is the detail I managed to get out of the sky. It looked a bit grey, but there is a bit of detail there. Also, the little green bush bottom left-hand corner is actually quite nice. Lots of detail in there, and it's quite colourful. It draws the eye into the photo. What I do not like, I would have liked a bit more detail on the tree itself, but I simply do not have exposure that brings out enough detail on the tree. The tree itself is interesting, but not that interesting. Overall, I think it was a nice try, but I don't think this image will end up in a portfolio. I was hoping that the very nice colors in the plants would also be on the tree, but for some reason it didn't carry over into this particular tree.
Well everyone, I think that's it for this morning. Some more showers rolling in and I'm getting rather wet, and so is the equipment. I need to equip myself better for these wet days around here. But thanks for joining me. I think I managed to capture 1 or 2 images that are worthwhile at least spending some time on in post-processing. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already to my channel, please do so. Also, if you like any of my images, please contact me direct for custom prints, limited edition prints, or go look in the description below and have a look at my Redbubble site, where you can also buy other merchandise, anything from t-shirts to mugs with the images on. Appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Have a great day and keep safe. Bye.